The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.
With so many people living longer, the fear of outliving your money becomes a reality for many of us. Will I be a financial burden? Will I outlive my money? How will I be remembered? My name is Neil Himmelstein, president of Main Street Planning Group. Please contact me by visiting mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. I will introduce you to strategies that will guarantee you will not outlive your money, that can guarantee you will not be a burden on your loved ones. Through a collaborative approach, we will uncover solutions that offer tax-efficient strategies, lifetime income, and legacy planning, choice, organization, direction, and education. That is the code we stand behind. Contact mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. And listen to me every Friday at 3 p.m. as I host the Main Street Code for Financial Success, right here on 103.9 LI News Radio. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein. And when we talk about our code, we talk about choice, organization, direction, and education. And we work with hundreds of advisors across the United States dealing with life insurance, annuities, disability, and long-term care. We work with CPAs and accountants, and we work with you to help you with all of your long-term planning, whether it be long-term care or putting together a retirement package, or being your quarterback in all your financial planning needs. Organizing your accountant, attorney, and yourself. You need to have a team when you work with people, and we like to be in the middle of that team so that everybody's in the same direction for your plans. And today we're very fortunate to have with us Troy Rosasco with Hansen Rosasco. And Troy is a partner in a firm that specializes, one of the leading specialties in the country, in working with 9/11 victims. Would you say hello, Troy?
Hello. How are you, Nick?
Neil.
Neil. Oh, I
That's
apologize.
All right. That's okay.
Pleasure to be with you today.
All good. So you have an interesting. I'll call it a niche, but it's humongous. You know, when I would talk to you about this, and people think of 9/11 because they mostly think of first responders, correct?
That's correct.
But it's more than that.
It really is, because after 9/11, after the buildings fell, there was so much exposure to everybody who was downtown. And the statistics are that there was exposure to about 120,000 first responders.
Oh.
But even more so, the EPA administrator, about 5 days after the buildings fell, out of a need to get New York up and running again, because it really is the financial capital of the world, they said to the world that it's okay to come back. We need our financial institutions back. And they said the air is safe to breathe. Unfortunately, that was not true.
Right.
We had so many workers downtown who came back to work valiantly, heroically, to get New York back on its feet.
Right.
We also had residents who were downtown,
Absolutely,
who lived through there. And it ends up that when you combine all the downtown workers with the residents and also some other professions, students, teachers, it was about 400,000 of that group that was exposed, in addition to the over 100,000 first responders.
I know, and everybody's got a story. I could tell you story after story of people I know, or relatives, or crazy stories. And you mentioned to me about somebody with Windows of the World, and I remember that story because I had a rep that was working with me who also was a caterer at Windows of the World, and he woke up late, and he was one of the managers, and you had a client, and it's small world, but as his hand hit the door, he was all upset because he was late for work, and he's running. As his hand hit the door, the first plane hit the building, and luckily he didn't go in. But and you have somebody that you've been working with, a family that did, and that was just a heartbreaking story, what you told me.
One of the situations that really made me want to help first responders and other 9/11 victims was in October of 2001. I got a call from a woman who worked in the North Tower on the 37th floor. And she worked for an insurance company as an administrative assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Her young son needed a job. And because of contacts she had in the building, she was able to get her 22-year-old son a job at Windows on the World.
Oh.
And it was just a starting job, probably bussing tables and stuff like that. But it was a start. And unfortunately, on 9/11, both mom and son were in the North Tower. He was up on the 107th floor.
Right.
Below where the airplane hit the building.
Right.
The mom, thankfully, was able to get out of the building, coming down from the 37th floor. The son, unfortunately, was not able to get out of the building and died when the building came down.
It just kills me to hear that. And the grief you were telling me, and
if you can only imagine being a mother who got her own son a job and really had a sense that she was somehow guilty for her son passing on that day, which obviously is not true because she didn't have anything to do. This was a horrible terrorist impact, but the survivor grief that she went on to live with and the post-traumatic stress syndrome that she was diagnosed with after that was so bad that she never could return to work.
Yeah, no, amazing. And I remember 9/11 so well, and I was at work, and everybody's got memories. 9/12 was a weird day. Remember what happened on 9/12? See, impacts me maybe more on a not a physical standpoint, but a financial standpoint. 9/12, the market crashed. Not only did the market crash, but I remember going home that day in the afternoon after all this craziness, and there was no traffic lights, there was no planes. It was quiet. For a day, I think there was no planes in the air. And it was just this eerie feeling with no lights and no cell phone service, but the market crashed. And some of the products I talk about, one of the products that I had a caller this week from the show who said, I hear from some shows annuities are bad, annuities are good, I'm ready to retire, I don't know what to believe because annuities had a bad name, but I can tell you what happened on 9/12. For those who had retirement accounts just in pure investments, and then their investments to their widows and children dropped to horrible levels that they were planning on leaving. But for those people who had life insurance, number one, and who had annuities, which had a death benefit protection, where although it was in an investment, at the time I was doing variable annuities. Now I just do fixed annuities. But for those who had those variable annuities, and I think of Cantor Fitzgerald or the big investment firm, which, we don't do annuities. But those who had annuities had that full value or more given to them, and actually more claims were paid out in annuities than actually life insurance because they protected themselves with, and were still invested, but protected and invested. Very interesting phenomenon. So I love when people say, I pay a 1% fee or something. There's a reason for that fee. And part of it was this protection, and what we do for a living is planning.
Well, one of the things that I know about my clients, oftentimes they will get a very substantial award from the Victims' Compensation Fund. And they will sit there, and some of them are not necessarily as financially astute as others. Maybe they don't have planners.
Right.
And they will say, well, what is a safe investment.
Right.
Because they want to protect their cash flow and income oftentimes for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And they don't want to run out.
Right.
How I wish I could say that there haven't been some of my clients who have gotten a very, very substantial award and would call me 2 months later and say, well, I made some bad investments. It's running out.
Gotcha. Well, listen, you're listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success, and I'm Neil Himmelstein. I can be reached at 631-647-4694. And my guest, Troy, how can they reach you if they need to reach out to you?
Sure. They can reach out. Probably the best way is to find us on our website.
Okay.
Which is www.911cancerclaim.com.
Terrific. And we're going to be right back after this commercial. Thank you. Welcome back to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein. You can always reach me at 631-647-4694. I welcome your comments and questions, and you can always email me or check out my website at themainstreetcode.com. And today we are with Troy, how do you pronounce your last name? Rosasco.
Rosasco.
Yes. And he is one of the original 9/11 attorneys that was there from day one, didn't charge, was so overtaken by this whole 9/11 thing. And prior to that, you were doing workers' compensation and some of this, but he changed his whole, 9/11 changed his whole profession, right?
It really did, because although I was helping injured and disabled individuals for many years before that, I was so impacted myself by 9/11 and hearing all these tragic stories, both from a perspective of it impacting people's employment,
right,
but also their health,
right,
and their economic impact. When your health is just devastated, your whole financial situation oftentimes can be devastated, and then when your finances are devastated, that puts a certain amount of stress on you, which then adds more problems to your health because you can't get as well as you'd like if you've got economic stress factors going on. So it's cyclical.
It's cyclical, and it becomes multi-generational. It just doesn't affect you. It affects your spouse. It affects your children who may, be young or going to college or and it could affect, you in that you can't take care of your parent or whatever. So it just affects the whole family, not just emotionally. The emotional trauma is, as you were telling us before the break, is absolutely insane. I can't even imagine the PTSD or whatever you want to call it and being in a situation like that. And, I'm praying for the people in Ohio who, again, we see the same thing. And the air is fine, the water's fine. Yeah, I got fish dying, but the water's fine. Don't worry about it. You can drink it. I'm not drinking that water. You drinking that water? No. So
when I heard what was happening in Ohio, where they were saying everything's fine, it was like deja vu all over again.
Oh, I bet. And it was for me too. When you have, I'm not, all the political stuff aside, but you hear this stuff and you go, okay, the air's fine. Well, wait a minute. Something's not adding up. So, I just hope that they mitigate the issues and prevent the issues so it doesn't happen again, instead of bantering about after the fact, which is what seems to happen, which has happened for 9/11 for years and which happens all the time. But, prevention is important. And we were talking before the break about there's funds for people that were exposed to 9/11, not just if you were a first responder, but also if you live near there or work there and you had this exposure and you may have cancer or some other weird ailment like autoimmune diseases. I know I had an autoimmune that almost put me down 14 years ago. It was a It was something called sarcoidosis, which is rare, but 9/11 could have been one of those factors, but it wasn't for me. Mine happened to be stress, by the way. That got my thing going crazy, and they thought I had lymphoma. But, these things are brought on. They may be sitting in your system, but all of a sudden you have an event like 9/11, and they're brought on. And there has been so much work done by Troy and his firm and others that there's a lot of different funds and different help for people that you may not be aware of. And that's why I thought it was so important to talk to Troy today about not just the Victims' Compensation Fund, but how do I get it, but there's other funds as well and other benefits. And if you don't go to a professional, he's going to tell you a little bit about some of the other benefits. And this is why you need to use Troy if you were exposed, if you had a situation, even if you don't think it's quite possible, have it checked out by an expert. That's what I always say. So, Troy, tell me about some of the different programs that are available.
I will in just a second. I want to pick up on a comment you had. Sarcoidosis, autoimmune disorder, sometimes hastened by exposure to toxins, is a covered 9/11 illness.
Wow.
There is not a day that I don't talk to a client in my office who has sarcoidosis.
Are you serious?
I swear to you.
When I got it, it was so weird. I mean, when it was discovered, and mine was brought on by stress.
Right.
Business stress that I don't like to talk about, but at the time, my lung functions were down, my liver functions were off, my kidney functions were off. I'm going to all these different doctors, and they thought I had lymphoma because it goes through your blood. Autoimmune diseases go through your blood system, so they start appearing differently. So you have to go through a battery of tests before they can even discover it. And
so let me talk now about the programs.
Sure, please.
That could help someone like yourself with either sarcoidosis, respiratory issues, cancers. There's over 68 covered cancers at this time that people who were exposed to the toxins down in and around Lower Manhattan can be covered for. So there's two major programs that the 9/11 funds are part of. The first, let's talk about health, is the World Trade Center Health Program. If a person was exposed to the toxins down in Lower Manhattan below Houston Street, they are potentially eligible to get free lifetime medical care at the best medical institutions for the rest of their lives.
Oh, my goodness.
You can, God forbid you have a cancer, you can go to Memorial Sloan Kettering or NYU. Stony Brook has a fantastic 9/11 program run by a fantastic doctor by the name of Benjamin Luft at Stony Brook. And wherever you need treatment the rest of your life, it will pay down to the last nickel.
That's huge.
And you obviously talk about money on your program.
Sure.
We know that devastating illnesses can sometimes, even with good insurance, devastate a family financially. Sometimes cancer diagnoses can lead to bankruptcies.
100%.
I see it all the time.
And it's not just the patient, but I know people who go to Sloan Kettering and they take their spouse, and that spouse has to take time off of work. They have to pay for parking. They have to pay to stay there. It's very expensive, and they have to go back every day. I mean, all of a sudden they have these expenses and they're not bringing in the income, and it devastates the entire family, even if you have good coverage. So bringing that up, there are cancer policies now that you can buy. Some of them are new to the state of New York. Very interesting, because the cancer policies differ. There have been cancer policies. Some cancer policies only pay for specific cancers, and they only pay a couple $100 a day for this or $50 a day for this. The policies that we're looking at and recommending today give you a lump sum of money upon diagnosis for all sorts of cancers, not quite as specific, But with that lump sum of money, you can use it not only for your care, even if you have health insurance, but also for your spouse or whatever your family needs are. It could take you over the hump. Now, a lot of the misconception about insurance is people try and insure 100% everything they have. That's not the reality, including long-term care insurance. Sometimes you want to include a piece of what you have. And, you know, I'd like to get more in depth because I have financial advisors that constantly are trying to overinsure people. That's not what insurance is for. You're listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. And again, if you need to reach me, 631-647-4694. I welcome any questions, comments. Talk to me about your situation, or if you have policies you need reviewed, give me a call. I'm glad to help, no charge. And I'm with Troy. And Troy, how can they get a hold of you if they want to speak to you?
I truly think the best way is pull out your iPhone or your mobile phone and Google Hansen and Rosasco. We're right in Hauppauge, and we'd be glad to answer all your questions.
Thanks again, everybody. Have a great weekend.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or